To initiate his wired and metered electric energy power monopoly in the gay 90s, 1890, which 3/4 of a century later became an overwhelming socio-economic power, the elder J.P. Morgan used the earlier formula of issuing bonds and preferred stocks on each of his enterprises as soon as they were paying dividends. He was thus provided with additional free capital to initiate other branches of the power structure system, for example, in copper mining for use in the generation and conduction of electric power, steel manufacture for the high line masts and structural housings of the electric equipment, etc. He used his engineering firm of Stone Webster to design and build his foreign country power systems operated by Electric Bond and Share Company EBASCO. His price increasing by the power companies was automatically matched by increase in the stock market sale of his company's shares. These shares' values increased with his own equities advance. Using these equities as capital, he opened his own banks. Because his enterprising monopolies earned good dividends, shares in his companies became increasingly popular. His own bank and the banks he controlled opened brokerage departments. He backed the opening of many stock exchange seat-owning individuals' brokerage houses to cope with the increasing complexity of open market selling and buying of his company's shares or bonds. By the time of the 1929 crash, Morgan was controlling the boards of directors of General Electric, General Motors, U.S. Steel, the big three copper companies, the telephone and telegraph companies, all the Edison Electric Public Utilities, etc., and many of the U.S. banks. At the outset, Morgan's partners gave Harvard University its law and business schools, from whose highly educated specialized graduates they recruited the army of lawyers and financial experts to service their Wall Street offices. This legal army handled the behind-the-scenes complex contractings and financial paperwork implementing Morgan's and his associates' enterprises. There being no laws against so doing prior to 1929, he used general bank deposits to underwrite his enterprises. In the early 1920s, the Morgan-dominated banking system pushed farm machinery sales to farmers on time payment plans secured to the banks by first mortgages on the farm properties as well as on the machinery. As I explained in Critical Path, the bad hog market of 1926 hit farmers financially, causing many to be unable to make their monthly payments on their time-purchased farm machinery. The country banks not only replevened the machinery, but foreclosed on the farms, which were mortgaged to guarantee the time payments. The country banks found the farms unsaleable as there were no other USA individuals eager to go into farming. How are you going to keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris, World War I song? Then the bigger city banks, which had loaned the small banks money based on the soundness of physical land and machine collateral, foreclosed on the small country banks. The larger city banks also found their foreclosure properties unsaleable. No cash funds were available to accommodate their depositors' withdrawals. Runs on banks multiplied. There came a crisis moment when over 5,000 banks closed in one day. Finally, the big Chicago banks closed and only the big New York banks remained. Then it was discovered that they too, having loaned their deposits for industrial ventures, now lacked cash monies with which to refund their depositors, and the New Deal and FDR declared the bank moratorium, thereby avoiding admitting the bankruptcy of the U.S. banking system and with it the end of USA capitalism. The U.S. Congress, inquiring exhaustively into the matter, found that those New York banks' brokerage departments had been using deposits for underwriting venture industries. Because this was at the heart of the failure, the Glass-Steagall Banking Act of 1933 was enacted permanently, it was hoped, separating venture brokerage underwriting from the New Deal government's guaranteed bank deposits of the people. J.P. Morgan Sr.'s strategy of organization of the financing and control of USA industrial development was evolved. J.P. Morgan Sr.'s strategy of organization of the financing and control of USA industrial development was evolved from his close cooperation with the Bank of England's centuries-old behind-the-scenes laws of accepted precedent of physical property rights and their convertibility into paper securities as marketable shares in enterprise. The Bank of England and Morgan nurtured the young Grunch of 18th century giants from their youth into lusty 19th century colonial maturity. J.P. Morgan became the official fiscal agent of the British Empire in World War I as the Allies' purchasing agent from 1914 to 1918. Morgan's amassing in the USA of the profits of World War I shifted the world capital of the Grunch of corporate giants from Europe to America, and until the 1929 crash, assured Morgan's dominance of the socio-economic evolutionary balance of power over human affairs on planet Earth.